The soldiers floated awkwardly above the shattered cities of Earth, or at least what used to be Earth. Gravity had abandoned the planet, or perhaps the planet had abandoned it. Either way, the human military units now resembled a swarm of metallic beetles with glowing visors and bouncing helmets, each drifting in unpredictable arcs through the open sky. Captain Reynolds gripped the edge of his floating utility belt, which, despite having nothing to hold on to, seemed to be his lifeline. "Does anyone actually know how to, I don't know, swim through air?" he asked, twisting slowly and narrowly avoiding a collision with Sergeant Lopez, who had spun like a windmill after misjudging a burst of microgravity. "Sir, affirmative," Lopez replied, voice muffled by his helmet. "I was trained in 0G0, okay? I forgot what it's called. Anyway, I'm floating fine." A sudden flip sent him past Reynolds' line of vision, his boots flailing as though the universe were insisting he audition for an interstellar ballet. Above them, the sky shimmered in an impossible spectrum, pulsating with strange colors that humans had no names for. Alien birds, if they could be called that, zipped by, their wings refracting light into shapes that made the soldiers instinctively raise their weapons. "Do we shoot them?" asked Private Kim, who had yet to adjust to the fact that aiming in zero gravity required predicting future positions rather than shooting at where a target was. "Do not shoot," Reynolds barked. "We are guests here, probably. And by guest, I mean uninvited floating guests who are definitely terrifying the local wildlife." His own words echoed comically through his helmet speakers, bouncing around and creating an unintended loop of panic in his head. Meanwhile, beneath the shimmering haze of the atmosphere, the aliens were watching with a mix of terror and fascination. They had never seen humans, or anything remotely like them, before. From their perspective, the humans were winged demons, glowing, metallic, and flailing in the sky. The alien woman crouched atop a twisting spire of translucent material that seemed alive, her long ears twitching with every movement. Her eyes, the color of molten silver, tracked each human's trajectory, and her lips curled with restrained amusement. She leaned closer, trying to discern whether these airborne invaders were dangerous, or just terribly clumsy. One of the soldiers, Lieutenant Grayson, had grabbed what he thought was a handhold, only to realize it was a tendril of living material that recoiled at his touch, yanking him backward. Maybe not a handhold," he muttered as he spun uncontrollably, arms flailing. "I repeat, this is not a handhold." He collided with Corporal Evans, sending both of them tumbling like ragdolls into a floating fountain of phosphorescent liquid. Evans emerged dripping with glowing goo, grumbling, "Next time we pack snacks instead of armor. At least snacks don't try to eat you." Above them, the alien woman's ears twitched again. She had never seen anything so absurdly coordinated in its chaos. She decided to experiment, sending a tiny telekinetic pulse toward Grayson. It was meant to gently nudge him away from the fountain. Instead, he somersaulted into a perfect pirouette that landed him upright on a hovering platform, arms raised in victory. "I meant to do that," he declared, entirely failing to hide the exhilaration and confusion. "Captain," radioed Lopez, voice trembling somewhere far off. "Are all humans supposed to be this clumsy, or is it just today's special?" "Negative," Reynolds replied, adjusting his visor, which had begun displaying holographic annotations of each floating teammate. "This is standard. Welcome to zero-gravity Earth, where physics refuses to cooperate and common sense is a suggestion." From the alien spire, she sent another pulse, this one toward the hovering soldiers as they tried to regroup. It caused one soldier to spin in place while waving his weapon like a baton, and another to drift backward into a luminous, tree-like structure, emerging with a glowing leaf stuck to his helmet. He yanked it off, muttering something that sounded suspiciously like a curse, though the leaf continued glowing as if mocking him. The aliens below squeaked and whistled, moving in and out of hiding as the humans passed overhead. They had no idea what to make of the strange creatures. Some of them hid behind semi-transparent structures, some hovered in panic, and a few dared to mimic the humans' floating movements, resulting in an absurd spectacle of alien gymnasts flailing to keep up. Meanwhile, Reynolds spotted the alien woman for the first time. Her long ears twitched rhythmically, almost like metronomes as she observed him. She had the general appearance of a human female, delicate facial features, smooth skin, but her ears, pointed and expressive, conveyed her emotions far more openly than any human expression could. She smiled faintly, and Reynolds, despite being trained for battlefield calm, felt a momentary flicker of unease, or perhaps admiration. All right, Reynolds muttered, speaking into his helmet. Let's try not to terrify the locals further. And if we can avoid turning into airborne pancake soup, that would be ideal. He waved toward the alien woman, who responded with a small pulse of light that caused the soldiers to bounce slightly in unison. She's friendly, muttered Evans, still dripping with goo. Friendly or not, she's powerful, Reynolds replied, scanning the environment. And apparently she likes to mess with us. The soldiers pressed onward, drifting past floating cities and twisting towers of living crystal that pulsed like veins. The alien woman followed, giggling silently at their antics. At one point, a soldier, attempting to catch a floating communication device, collided with another soldier, sending both spinning into a pool of floating, luminescent jellyfish-like creatures. They flailed in panic, arms entangled in glowing tentacles, while the alien woman's ears twitched in suppressed laughter. "Sir, do we report this?" Lopez asked, voice trembling as he clutched at a piece of floating debris. "I think we just invented a new form of combat. Accidental zero-G wrestling with alien wildlife." "Report it," Reynolds said. "Yes, we'll report it when we survive it. Until then, let's float like majestic, horrifying demons and hope she's amused enough not to vaporize us." The alien woman hovered closer, tilting her head in curiosity. She sent another small pulse, this time nudging several soldiers into a gentle spin that carried them through a shimmering doorway of crystal. As they passed through, the soldiers collided midair with nothing at all, and somehow ended up perfectly aligned in a formation that looked surprisingly deliberate. Grayson raised his arms again, beaming. "See, coordination, we are excellent at this." "Excellent at chaos, you mean?" Evans muttered, shaking his goo-streaked helmet. From her perch, the alien woman's long ears twitched in amusement, her silvery eyes reflecting the soldiers' clumsy procession. She realized, with a mixture of intrigue and humor, that these humans, for all their blunders, had a peculiar charm. They were terrifying in appearance, absurd in motion, and perhaps, just perhaps, worth understanding. The soldiers continued to float deeper into the glowing city, occasionally bouncing off walls, narrowly avoiding floating spires, and dropping their weapons in panic when a curious alien creature brushed past them. Reynolds muttered a string of incomprehensible commands, half to his team and half to the universe, and somehow, through a combination of luck, misjudgment, and unseen nudges, they remained unscathed. And as the alien woman watched them drift into the glowing horizon, she twitched her ears again, thinking that perhaps the legends about humans were exaggerated, or maybe they were exactly right. Either way, she was entertained. The soldiers drifted deeper into the alien city, their movements awkward and erratic as if gravity had gone on vacation and left only the worst dancers behind. Captain Reynolds tried to keep the formation tight, but the concept of tight seemed laughably subjective when each soldier floated in slow-motion arcs, spinning and bumping into one another like metallic pinballs. Private Kim collided with Lieutenant Grayson mid-spin, and they both ricocheted off a pulsating wall of bioluminescent material, landing atop a hovering, semi-transparent platform that quivered beneath their combined weight. "Why is the floor moving?" Kim asked, voice echoing oddly in the helmet as a ripple of light slithered beneath him like a living river. "It's not the floor," Reynolds said, exasperated. "It's the city trying to figure out if we're dinner, furniture, or decorative aliens. I'm betting on all three." Above them, the alien woman followed silently, her long ears flicking with every erratic motion. She tilted her head and sent a subtle telekinetic nudge toward Grayson, intending to guide him away from a wall that seemed ready to squish him. Instead, Grayson executed an accidental somersault through a floating archway, narrowly missing a swarm of glowing, jelly-like creatures. He landed upright, helmet slightly askew, and saluted as if he had just performed a ceremonial maneuver. "All part of the plan," he declared, completely ignoring Evans, who was still dangling a luminescent tentacle like a Christmas ornament. "Plan or panic, sir?" Evans muttered, brushing off glowing goo, "because I'm losing track." The alien woman suppressed a laugh, the subtle twitching of her ears betraying her amusement. She decided to increase the challenge, guiding the soldiers through a corridor where the walls pulsed and shifted like liquid. A soldier, mistaking a moving wall for a solid surface, slammed into it with a satisfying squelch. He floated backward, flailing, as the corridor seemed to bend and twist with a mind of its own, nudging him gently through a series of narrow gaps. "Does anyone else feel like we're in an alien funhouse?" Lopez asked. His voice bounced comically inside his helmet, each syllable lagging slightly behind the last, creating an accidental echo track of panic. Funhouse is one word for it, Reynolds replied. My personal favorite. Zero-G obstacle course where the hazards are alive, glowing, and probably sentient. He floated forward, narrowly avoiding a translucent vine that lashed out at him, wrapping around his leg before recoiling with a wet, slurping noise. I don't even know if that thing is dangerous, but I'm not sticking around to find out. Meanwhile, small alien observers popped in and out of hiding, mimicking the humans' movements with clumsy gestures of their own. Some of them tried to imitate the soldiers, spinning somersaults, only to end up tangled in one another, creating a floating knot of limbs and glowing skin. The alien woman giggled quietly, sending a tiny pulse of energy that nudged the soldiers slightly. Grayson, caught mid-spin, ended up perfectly aligned with Evans in a formation that looked deliberately choreographed. See, Grayson said, we are clearly excellent at this. Excellence is subjective, sir, Evans said, dripping with goo. But chaos is undeniable. They reached a chamber that seemed to breathe, the walls pulsing in waves of color, responding to every human movement. The alien woman hovered near the ceiling, her ears twitching, considering whether she should intervene more directly. She finally sent a gentle pulse, nudging the soldiers into a synchronized floating line. Reynolds raised an eyebrow at the sudden order, then glanced up at her and said, All right, I don't know who's helping us or why, but thanks. And if you're planning to roast us later, could you at least warn us? The alien woman's ears twitched in amusement. She projected a tiny pulse that made several floating tools orbit the soldiers in whimsical patterns, forcing them to dodge and weave in a way that resembled a zero-gravity ballet. Captain, I think we just became interstellar dancers, Lopez said, narrowly missing a hovering wrench that twinkled like a comet. Dancers or doomed, I'm not sure yet, Reynolds muttered. Either way, keep moving. As they navigated the twisting corridors, they discovered alien inscriptions etched into floating panels. The inscriptions pulsed with light, and when Evans touched one, it projected a holographic map that hovered above his hand like a miniature galaxy. Look at this, Evans said. It's kind of beautiful and slightly terrifying. The alien woman observed quietly, sending another subtle pulse that rearranged the map's elements to form symbols the humans could interpret. Grayson gasped, pointing at a glowing symbol. I think she's trying to communicate, or maybe she's just messing with us. Or both, Reynolds said. Let's hope it's communication. I'd rather not be messed with today. Their path eventually led them to a chamber filled with hovering, translucent spheres that reflected the city in miniature. One soldier, trying to catch a sphere, ended up floating into another, sending both spinning like tiny planets colliding. Evans floated by, catching Grayson's arm to stabilize him, and muttered, I swear every time we touch something, the universe laughs at us. The alien woman's long ears twitched faster now, clearly delighted. She sent a larger pulse, this one meant to guide the humans through the chamber, but it had the unintended effect of causing them to spin in perfect unison for several seconds, before landing scattered across the room like glittering confetti. Grayson raised his arms triumphantly, as if the choreography were intentional. Outstanding teamwork, men, truly remarkable. Remarkable disaster, Evans muttered, brushing off a bit of glowing residue from a sphere. Remarkably hazardous. The alien woman floated closer, observing the humans with an analytical eye. She noticed something peculiar. Despite the chaos, they adapted quickly, laughing at their own mistakes and helping each other recover from every improbable tumble. She sent another pulse, nudging a particularly nervous soldier toward a safer path, and felt a strange sense of amusement mixed with curiosity. A low rumble filled the chamber as one of the floating spheres fractured, revealing a shimmering portal that pulsed with alien energy. The soldiers froze midair, unsure whether to approach or flee. Reynolds, ever the optimist in chaos, shrugged. Well, I guess we're going through it. Either adventure or doom, pick your favorite. One by one, they floated toward the portal, flailing awkwardly and bumping into one another, while the alien woman watched with twitching ears and a faint smile. She considered whether to follow them or let them discover the secrets of the city on their own. A small pulse of her telekinetic power pushed them gently forward, ensuring they wouldn't float off into the endless void outside the chamber. Captain, Lopez said nervously, I think the city is alive, and it's kind of sarcastic. Not sarcastic, Reynolds replied, just very polite about letting us survive, for now. As they crossed the threshold of the portal, the soldiers found themselves in a vast open chamber where gravity fluctuated unpredictably, creating loops and arcs that sent them tumbling in all directions. The alien woman hovered at the far end, her long ears twitching, her silvery eyes reflecting the bizarre scene of clumsy humans spinning, bumping, and somehow laughing through the chaos. She thought for the first time that these creatures might actually be worth her attention, not just for observation, but for the unpredictable delight they brought to her otherwise orderly world. And so the humans continued their precarious exploration, each tumble and collision punctuated by humor, each moment of chaos tempered by unexpected grace, while the alien woman followed silently, amused and intrigued, her long ears twitching at every clumsy pirouette, sensing that this first contact might become something far more extraordinary than either species could predict. The humans floated into the central chamber of the city, a vast expanse that shimmered with translucent towers and floating currents of light. Gravity here was more chaotic than ever, tugging at them in unexpected directions, spinning them gently, then letting them drift lazily, teasing their balance. Captain Reynolds gritted his teeth, trying to maintain order as Lieutenant Grayson bounced off a column and shouted, "I'm fine. I meant to do that." His helmet had somehow rotated upside down, giving him the appearance of a bewildered flying octopus. "Fine, Grayson," Reynolds muttered. "Let's keep the octopus enthusiasm to a minimum, please." The alien woman hovered above the chamber, ears twitching as always, her silvery eyes reflecting the humans' chaotic ballet. Today, she decided, would be the day she intervened directly. With a subtle pulse of telekinetic energy, she nudged the soldiers toward the center of the chamber, where a glowing sphere of alien energy hovered, pulsating like a heartbeat. "What is that?" Evans asked, drifting too close and nearly spinning into the ceiling. He held onto a floating handhold that turned out to be nothing more than a projection, which wobbled and collapsed in his grasp. "Seriously, everything is trying to trick me." "Not tricking," the alien woman projected mentally, her voice a melodic, echoing tone that made the soldiers flinch. "Guiding." The humans froze in midair, staring as she appeared fully, stepping from the shimmering platform above them. She looked human in general form, delicate facial features, lithe body, but her long, expressive ears twitched with each gesture, betraying her amusement. Reynolds instinctively raised a hand in greeting. "Captain," she said, her voice both gentle and commanding, "you are far from what my species expected. Terrifying, yes, clumsy, certainly, yet capable of adaptation and humor." Reynolds scratched the back of his helmet. "That's probably the nicest way anyone has ever called us a disaster." The alien woman tilted her head, sending a pulse that caused several floating devices around them to arrange themselves into a holographic display of the city and its corridors. "You have survived tests my species has endured for centuries," she said. "Few outsiders endure this without falling apart entirely." "Technically," Evans said, "I fell apart, physically, emotionally, spiritually, mainly physically." He gestured at the glowing goo clinging to his armor. "Minor setbacks," the alien woman replied with the faintest twitch of amusement in her ears. "You have learned quickly." Observed, adapted, and she paused to send a pulse that nudged Grayson into spinning a perfect somersault. "Even found joy in it. That is rare." The humans, still catching their balance, glanced at each other. Reynolds exhaled. "So, are we friends now? Or, less likely to be vaporized?" She smiled, and for the first time the humans felt warmth from the alien world. "Friends," she said, though the word shimmered in the air, carried on a pulse of energy rather than mere sound. "At least for now." A sudden ripple passed through the chamber, and the glowing sphere at the center fractured into countless fragments, drifting gently in all directions. The alien woman's long ears twitched sharply as she guided the fragments with subtle pulses. Some moved to encircle the humans, forming floating platforms that stabilized their positions. Others hovered above, creating patterns of light that reflected like stars in miniature. "Whoa," Lopez said, spinning slightly to avoid a floating shard. "We're like in a zero-G crystal snow globe." "Snow globe with a heartbeat," Evans added, smacking a floating shard by accident and bouncing backward into Grayson. "And possibly sharp edges." The alien woman floated down to hover near them, sending pulses that slowed their spins and aligned them into a semicircle around her. "You see now," she said, "that chaos is not always destruction. Adaptation, cooperation, and humor, these are your greatest weapons and your greatest survival skills." Reynolds nodded slowly, looking at each soldier. I guess we learned something about ourselves. Maybe we're not perfect, but we improvise, we adapt, and apparently we look ridiculous doing it, but that's not the worst thing in the universe. The alien woman's ears twitched again, as if approving his assessment. She sent another pulse that caused the floating fragments of the sphere to merge into a single, glowing crystal above them. It reflected each soldier's face in turn, showing their expressions clearly for the first time. Exhaustion, awe, and something like pride. Grayson floated forward, raising a hand. So, we can leave now? Or is there more floating around and accidentally saving the city for us? There is more, the alien woman replied, but not for you. The city will now recognize you as part of its history. Your mistakes, your laughter, your resilience, they are imprinted here. She flicked her fingers, and the floating fragments expanded outward, creating a ripple through the entire chamber that caused the city itself to hum in resonance. The humans felt it, a subtle vibration through their suits and bones, as if the planet itself were acknowledging their presence. Reynolds smiled, a rare, wide smile that even he found surprising. Well, I'll be damned. We survived, adapted, and made friends with a humanoid with long ears who could have roasted us instantly. The alien woman tilted